And for more on the challenges responders and aid organizations are facing as they try to help quake victims in Myanmar, we're joined by Alexander Matheou, Regional Director for the Asia Pacific with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Alexander, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I want to start by asking you what actually happens on the ground when that so-called golden window passes. I mean, do search and rescue teams start changing the way they operate, start using different tools and methods? And how does all that impact the kind of work that you, the Red Cross, is doing on the ground?
Well, the nature of the search and rescue depends on the capacity of the country to deploy specialists and equipment. In that respect, Myanmar is not the best place where you can experience an earthquake. People are having to do search and rescue themselves. They're digging people out with their hands. There's some international assistance now, but it's not enough to cover all the areas affected by the earthquake. So in these first windows of opportunity, lives will be saved, and I'm sure many have been saved, and most of those stories we will never hear because it's neighbors helping each other, and most of the assistance will be done that way. Family members, neighbors, community groups, they'll be out day and night trying to provide search and rescue. Some international assistance has arrived from neighboring countries. There are volunteers and staff of the Myanmar Red Cross providing critical first aid and water at the site as we speak, supported by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. But that window to save people, I'm afraid, is closing. And now the long journey will begin to support people to recover. But in the first week or so, water, shelter, provision of medical assistance, they are absolutely critical. Whether or not you're under the rubble, even if you're outside, if you can't go back home, you're in the blazing heat all day. There's no power, water is not being pumped, getting clean drinking water, getting shade, it's a matter of life or death.
I mean, even before the quake hit, Alex, Myanmar was already facing significant challenges with millions displaced, many kind of from food and healthcare. What are the urgent needs that people in Myanmar are currently facing? You have stated some already, but what worries you the most?
Well, I suppose is the point that you just mentioned, that beyond the immediate life-saving needs caused by the earthquake, in Sagaing province, for example, there were 1.4 million displaced people. I was just with them 2 weeks ago. They stay in monasteries. It's thanks to monks and monasteries and the kindness of neighbors that they cope. They go out every day for daily labor, maybe bring back $1 a day if they've got work on that particular day. It's a very fragile life. Already I'd have described that as a very desperate humanitarian situation. Now the very same people are on the street. They can't rely on the charity of others at the moment. They can't rely on the shelter of the monasteries if those monasteries have been damaged. That is extreme vulnerability. So trying to make sure that lives are protected, basic necessities, as I mentioned, food, water, shelter, medical care, to make sure they are provided in the short term. And then the appeal of the IFRC, it really tries to anticipate what happens next. Because we're talking about this earthquake today. Probably we won't be talking about it in 2 months' time, but the people will still need support.
I'm trying to figure out at this point, Alex, how are you, deciding how to allocate the resources? Because the tremor and the rupture stretched for over 200 kilometers across multiple regions. I mean, is there anyone on the ground right now that's helping to coordinate and perhaps direct the various aid and humanitarian agencies, in the country at the moment?
Well, there are multiple humanitarian agencies in the country because it was anyway the most vulnerable country in Southeast Asia and usually considered one of the top 10 most vulnerable countries in the world. So it does have agencies present. We in the IFRC had pre-positioned stocks in place to work with the Myanmar Red Cross to reach about 8,000 families. That's all being distributed as we speak. Most of the people affected are in accessible parts of the country where it will be possible to provide assistance. But you're right that the earthquake has consequences in parts of the country that are not so easy to access, where control is disputed, and those areas are going to be harder to reach. The epicenter is reachable. But not all the people affected, I would imagine at this point, are seeing assistance.
Information at this time, Alex, has been pretty scarce because many areas have been cut off, but the latest numbers say at least 2,000 dead, hospitals and morgues overwhelmed. I'm wondering if you've heard from your teams on the ground, do you have a fuller picture of the scale of devastation?
No, unfortunately, we don't have a complete picture of casualties. I think we're all suspecting the numbers that we're seeing at the moment are lower than the real numbers, that as more information comes in, as more areas are reached, as more families come forward and declare that they've got somebody missing, we're going to see those numbers increase quite a lot, and the magnitude of this tragedy will become more evident. But I would say, sadly, at the moment, 4 days after the earthquake, we don't have that complete picture. Nor do we have, I would say, yet the full coordination mechanisms and aid flowing that we would like to see. But that's not unusual. Myanmar is not an easy place to deliver assistance. Custom clearances, visa permissions, all of these things can be quite difficult to move forward quickly. We're seeing a lot of solidarity within the region itself. I saw on your footage you had search and rescues from the Red Cross Society of China. Other states have managed to deploy search and rescue teams or to deliver aid. It'll be an intense, I think, international effort in the coming week or two. The International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement will be part of that. The IFRC will be supporting Myanmar Red Cross. We will want to protect as many lives as we can, but as I said, equally important, actually, is what happens next.
Alex, on top of the reports of airstrikes and violence in the region, there are also worries over the military junta confiscating and misusing supplies. Are these concerns valid? And if so, are there ways to get assistance to those in need?
We haven't experienced that ourselves at the moment. I can't speak for everybody else. It's not an unusual issue for people to experience in Myanmar, what you just described. We would continue to advocate to all stakeholders that neutral and impartial humanitarian assistance should reach anybody who needs it, regardless of political affiliation or regardless of where they are located. That's a key principle for us, and we would underline that to anybody we meet, whatever country or whatever part of the country. So I hope we will not see those blockages. If they do exist at the moment, I hope we will be able to overcome them. And I hope human solidarity will be greater than any incentives to block critical humanitarian assistance.
All right, Alex, we will have to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts. Alexander Matheou is Regional Director for the Asia Pacific with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies.